good day out there to all my listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in to Is Your Way in Your Way? And I'm your host. My name is Cassandra Crawley Mayo. And for those individuals, I would say my first time listeners, let me kind of share with you what this podcast is all about. It's about individuals who are stuck. You know, in your heart of hearts, there is something you should be doing. You know that you have a calling for something, and some of you kind of know what it is, but you just can't seem to move forward. And you can't move forward because you have a lot of maybe self imposed barriers or those roadblocks that's preventing you from living your best life on your terms. And we talk about topics related to business, personal development, and I would even say some self reflective topics that you're going to be able to self reflect as you hear these episodes. And today, our topic is called Uncover the Secrets of Happiness, Peace, and Success. I have a special guest that knows all about this, and I am super excited about it because it's actually all about this word called wisdom. Let me welcome Dr. G to the stage. Good day, Dr. G. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. And before we get started, I'm going to read your bio to my listeners so they get to know a little bit about you. Now, we've gone through this. Laura Gabayan is a world renowned physician and researcher, and she's dedicated her career to uncovering the deeper meanings of life and wisdom. Now, after she moved from Iran to the United States at age 6 and completed her education at UCLA, Dr. G embarked on the Wisdom Research Project in 2014. She interviewed 60 individuals across North America to explore the age old concept of wisdom beyond anecdotes and subjectivity. Her findings are encapsulated in her compelling book, Common Wisdom, where she defines wisdom through 8 scientific elements. So, again, I don't want you guys to miss this thought provoking conversation on harnessing the power of wisdom in your everyday life. Like I already told Dr. G, I'm really excited because one of the chapters, and I'm not sure who you honor, who's your superpower, who's your God, but the book of Proverbs and the Bible was just so fascinating to me. And that was a book about wisdom. So I just can't wait to get into that. So Dr. G, before what was life like before you completed your education at UCLA? What was going on with you then?
Well, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. And so
Okay.
I went to UCLA for college and then medical school, residency, and then fellowship. Fellowship is like a specialization in research. And I was publishing a lot in academia and in science.
Uh-huh.
And then starting in 2013, my body started to fall apart. And I developed random symptoms. As you can tell, my speech is not clear,
Uh-huh.
and so I developed these, and I was like, wait, the physicians that taught me were just so limited in how they were so quick to judge and diagnose.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I started thinking, well, the people who don't do that otherwise. And then I looked into what we knew about wisdom, and I'm like, well, it's very subjective and anecdotal, and that's when I decided to do my own project and define it. And
Okay.
and that's when I defined it, and I was like, this is really a secret to success in
Okay.
life. It's a secret to living a meaningful life. It's having peace. So the 8 elements I found in my book, Common Wisdom, were resilience, kindness, positivity, spirituality, humility, tolerance, creativity, and curiosity. And
Uh,
those eight
yeah.
elements, I talk about them in the book, which is very easy to read. the conversation is very easy to read. You can see from the reviews. But I talk about them in a way that whether you have it or not, you can build it. And that's the goal.
Okay. Let me ask you, let me go back a bit, Dr. G. When you graduated, it's my understanding that you were like emergency medicine. That's what you were going to do,
So
right?
control was always very important in my life. And
Control.
yeah, and
Okay.
so and I that's when I know I pursued in undergrad and med school, and I just in general I decided, you know what, I want to do well in school
Right.
just so I can control where I went. And then I pursued a field where I knew what could happen to anybody anywhere. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I control knowing that knowledge, like they had a heart attack in the middle of nowhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and that's what emergency medicine gave me.
Okay. So now explain again to my listeners what um what triggered you to, I think if I'm not mistaken, you stopped emergency medicine and you started working on this project?
So, 2013, I noticed that my body was starting to fall apart.
Your body.
And the physicians I interacted with didn't have a reason. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't thinking outside the box. And
Uh-huh.
so I would probably say it took me a good 4 or 5 years, 2017, 2018, 19, right before COVID, for me to realize that, you know what, this is that I'm this is not going to change, because I prayed to just get better and go back to seeing patients. But that's when I was like, well, no, I really want to understand wisdom. I
Mm-hmm.
did not know anything about wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I did know how to do research. So I was like, let me apply the same rigor I used in doing my projects to understanding wisdom. And I did. But I
Okay.
interviewed the people I interviewed in 2002.
Okay. So
2022, I mean. Sorry.
okay, so what you're saying is because the doctors that were, as you indicate, your body you felt was just falling apart, and they didn't really know why, they were kind of guessing a little bit,
Well,
and that this, okay,
they weren't guessing. I think they're just like limited to what they knew. So
okay,
they had a diagnosis like must be this, they had this, it must be that. They weren't willing to consider a bunch of different options.
okay, and that's why you decided to focus on wisdom because did you think that they did not have the wisdom?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not, it's funny. Someone asked me, do you think, in the podcast I did, do you think so and so has wisdom? Do you think someone, I'm like, I'm not here to judge.
Right.
The scientist, I'm just here to tell you what I saw. And
Okay.
so I definitely felt like they were not willing. And I think it's because they're so set on learning they learn so much. And they're so set on, okay, it must be this, that's how you treat it, it must be this, that's what you do. They don't have time or room to think about other things.
Okay, so that's your reason for your quest. I call
Yes.
it a quest to figure
Yeah.
out what this wisdom thing was, right?
Right.
Um, Let me ask you this. How did you define wisdom before the project? Do you know?
I don't know if I really knew. I mean, it's funny because to do any project, you have to look up what is done in the academia. So I looked through both psychology, sociology, and geriatric journals, and I didn't really know what it was. I knew
Okay.
that, okay, so it had an inverse relationship with age, and that inverse U, so the people who have it most are age 50 to 79
Uh-huh.
years old. And then I read that, okay, that those that are wise are most likely limited to a specific area. That's why mine is North America.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not specific based on gender. race, or political affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I kind of really know. I didn't
Okay.
know.
Okay. So, and I also understand that your goal for doing this project, it wasn't about the money.
No.
What was the goal? What was your end in mind for this?
No, I after I did it, and after I spoke with the people, and as I was writing the book, I was like, "Wow, this can really impact people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
It can change the way they think, the way they are." Someone recently just told me it saved her marriage. I'm like, so that definitely changed her life. So it really can change people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that goal with writing the book and publishing it was that.
Okay. All right. So, why did you interviewed 60 individuals?
Yes.
Why 60? Why not less? Why not more?
So it's funny because I around 20 or
Uh-huh.
like I had really heard the same thoughts. And you're supposed to, with research, with this type of research, you're supposed to kind of stop when you do hear a lot of the same things. The same things were, despite the negative situation they had encountered, they were in peace. Despite what they had seen, they were happy,
Mhm,
and they believed that everything will be okay. And so, but
mhm.
I kept going. I'm a scientist. I'm like, no, 20 is not enough. So
Yeah.
I kept going and going, and I just stopped 60. But
Okay.
I could have stopped. It would have given me the same results as top at like
Interesting.
160 or
Uh-huh.
600, wherever.
Uh-huh. Well, how did you find these people? So you look for people that, like you indicated, from 50 to 70 on or
Nine,
something,
79.
79. You figured, they were wise because they were older and they've experienced life. How did you decide who to interview?
So I can't, as a scientist, you can't have a say in who you interview. You have to let the numbers tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really say, oh yeah, you can do it, you can. But everyone helped in saying something important, I thought. And you'll see that in my book, Common Wisdom, you'll see that there are different life stories or quotes or things of people in there. And that's important. And so I I did end up, we posted on social media. We
Mm-hmm.
put it on next door.
Okay.
I told every single person I knew, do you know someone wise?
Okay.
And the whole process of them recommending or nominating someone was complicated because that person had to fall into the age range. They had to set up a time to meet with me. It was complex, but it worked out.
Okay. Now, how did you? Could you share like how many questions did you have? And you asked everyone the same question?
I asked everyone, I don't have them here with me, but my book has it in there at the beginning.
Okay. Okay.
I asked them the exact same 10 questions.
Okay.
And the questions were not, what is wisdom to you? It was more about getting to know them and,
Mm-hmm.
and what life experiences they've had and getting to know the life they've lived and what's important to them. But it
Mm-hmm.
was definitely not about, it's called the Wisdom Research Project, but it wasn't about like having them define wisdom because no one's really going to define it.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's true. That's interesting. Um, so after you interviewed everyone, you talk about these 8 elements. And I'm making an assumption, and I'm certain you'll correct me. Did you find those by common themes that individuals had?
It was. And so there's two types of research, and the type of research we use kind of creates themes and ideas that they have. And we had over 20 initially
Hmm.
and collapses them into one big theme. Like, for example, the third theme, positivity,
Hmm.
had humor in there and also had gratitude in there as well. So people that make gratitude a really important part of their lives or were really funny during the interview, or felt like humor was important,
Mm-hmm.
they got positivity. So that clocks into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, name the 8 elements again for the listeners.
So the first one was resilience, and I'll say them in order now. The reason I say them in order is I mean, first of all, it's what's most common. So the first one was most common, and then the lowest less common. So in the book Common Wisdom, right? The first one is resilience, then kindness, positivity, spirituality, humility, tolerance, creativity, and curiosity.
Okay. Now, based on those elements, why are they secret sauce of happiness and peace and success?
It's interesting because that's what these people had, despite going through difficulties in life,
Mm-hmm.
despite wherever it was.
Mm-hmm.
They were very content and they were happy and they were at peace. And they
Mm-hmm.
were not angry, they were not bitter. They were kind of at peace. And when asked what's important to them is, doing something kind or pursuing kindness. So it was just very interesting. And I definitely thought about the movie The Lion King a lot,
The
and the
liking.
wise monkey
Uh-huh.
Rafiki. He seemed very kind of at peace as well. So
Uh-huh.
I feel like he embodied a lot of the symptoms that it's symptoms that a lot of the elements we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. 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 So if like for example, when I kind of shared with the audience, my listeners, there are certain things that they like to accomplish in their life. Maybe some of them want to do research, get their own company, change jobs, forgive somebody, buy a new home. In your project, did you find any commonalities on why individuals get stuck? They know they want to do certain things, and we talk about like the wisdom, you have a more meaningful life. That's one of the things that you had discussed. And I think that as individuals, there's certain things that they want to do. The thought is coming from somewhere. Why do they want to do this? It's coming from something. So when you went through the wisdom part of everything, did you find anybody that wanted to do something but stuck, or were these individuals just went with the flow?
I think they went with the flow, and I think it's important for your audience to also understand why. So first of all, observe, but also why are they pursuing X, or
Uh-huh.
why are they stuck? So what is leading to all this? Is there more stuff behind it? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding, observing it is really important. But they were kind of like, they're kind of like at peace, like, oh no, it didn't work out. Or I remember one of my interviewees talked about how her company failed
Mm-hmm.
years ago, and she was like, she learned that she had to be fiercely flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Again, excuse my speech. By being flexible, she realized it's not working. And that's what led her kind of down the path of being realizing, instead of dwelling on the fact that it didn't work, she changed course.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Rather than giving up, like some people,
Right.
well, I failed, so.
Right. And in a way, it's kind of like, just because you change course does not mean you're giving up, as you said. It does not mean that. It's just accepting. It's kind of
Mhm.
realizing, oh, that didn't work out. Let me go on and do something else.
Let's talk about a couple of the elements I find fascinating. Humility.
So fascinating.
Yeah, humility. What was going on in those interviews that enabled you to see that being humble is an element of happiness and peace and success?
No, the Buddha talked about this a long time ago. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I think his thoughts for being humble was wisdom, and obviously, I found so many other elements. But I like, for example, when I think about somebody I interviewed, it was much more important to him to talk about the nonprofits he created than the different shows he had managed or produced.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I was like, wait a second. That has no he had no regard for those shows, even though he was at Disney for a long time and he was so well accomplished. Or someone actually talked about in my book named Albie. He sold over 100 million. He's a record producer. Records before the age of the internet.
Wow.
And it's funny because one of the news shows featured him and showed some of the Emmys he's gotten and the records from the Bee Gees or Barbara Streisand, and he could
Mhm.
care less. It was like
Wow.
in this garage. And I just got a feel from when I spoke with Albie that, you know what? That was not important to him.
And so what was important to him that you got out of it?
I got out of it that it was, his family, his life, his, who he was and who, it was more of the love and the perspective of having people around him that was more important to him.
Oh, interesting. What about, even though this isn't an element, but serving, like service?
So that went into kindness,
Okay.
and kindness is my second element. And the reason was because the people did not only treat kindness as something important to kind of pursue, but they
Mhm.
were kind to themselves and they were kind to others.
Mhm.
And they were kind of different respects. They could have been like volunteers on
Mhm.
1-to-1, or it could have
Mhm.
been owning a nonprofit. So kindness was important. Service went to kindness.
Okay. Okay. When I look at all of these, humility, um, the resilience, the positivity, I'm reminded of a story in the Bible. I'm going to go back to the Bible, and it was a king by the name of Solomon. And you may have heard of Solomon. He was the wisest individual, that, as God indicated, he will be the most wisest, if that's a term.
I,
But
I have to read about him. I've heard, but
yeah,
yes.
very interesting. And there was an uh, a story. Well, first of all, um, in a dream, God had asked him, what did he want? As a king. And he was like, well, I'm so young. My dad knew everything. I didn't know a whole lot. So I guess I'm looking for just wisdom. And God was like, okay, well, we can do that. And God was fascinated that he didn't want to be the best king, win all the wars and all of that. His only thing he wanted was wisdom. And as a result of that, he got everything. He was very wealthy. And then I remember the story about two women, and they were both pregnant. And one of the women, as during her sleep, she rolled over the baby and she died. The baby died. Late that night, went to the other woman that had a baby and took her baby. And the woman whose baby was living, she was like, I know. When she saw the baby, she knew that baby was hers. And of course, she put the dead baby with the other one. So what they did was they went to the wise man. They went to Solomon. And Solomon was like, okay, well, this is what I'll do. I will take a saw or a hatchet and cut the baby in half. And then what happened is the real mother said, forget it. The other mother said, "That's okay. Cut them in half." And to me, that was wisdom. That was humility. That was like, it's like what you said, common sense. But who would have thought about that? Who would have like, wow, okay, no problem. I'm going to cut this baby in half, and then you can have this piece, and you can have that piece. So that story, to me, that was an element to me of wisdom, because who would have thought, how would you have solved that issue? So yeah, Solomon, it's a lot of things in the book of Proverbs that that encapsulates a lot of these elements that you talked about. So I
I
just
should
want,
read it.
yeah, I wanted to bring that out. And Solomon, it started in the first Kings, the first book of Kings, but Proverbs is what Solomon wrote, and it's just unbelievable how wisdom is richer than jewels.
Oh yeah, and I tell people, or I think in my intro or the beginning parts, what I found is priceless. It's
yes.
time. It's like something that will stay with you, and that's why in my book Common Wisdom I have a section which is not common to do, but I have a section of you write in your own thoughts of
Mm,
what something is to you both now maybe and whatever time in the future, because it's going to change. Like for example, I was not a very spiritual person.
mm,
I'm a physician, I'm a scientist. I didn't know what it meant, the divine meant, and we never learned about it. And
right.
we learned that if we did believe in it, we were in a way weak because
Hmm.
it didn't make sense. We didn't see it with our eyes. So if you didn't see it, can't measure it, then it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Hmm.
And
Right.
and so now though I've become much more spiritual. I
Mm,
do believe that my body falling apart was what happened for me and not to me. And
hmm.
it happened for me so I could write this book and I could relay these important facts to the people.
Mm.
So yeah, it's funny because initially I did not think of it that way.
Right. Right. And that's one of your elements,
Right, it was.
spirituality. Yeah.
Spirituality is one of my elements. I agree.
Exactly. And I think for me to get to terms with it, and you're right, I can't see it. So I just, so it can't be, because I don't see it. But then I remember when I have a headache, can't anybody see the headache, but I can feel it. So, so that's the kind of, that's the way that I guess saw things, but yeah, it's based on how you grew up and what you believed and all of that. So when you came from Iran, what was the lesson you learned by coming from a different country to the US?
Yeah, I don't know if I learned anything. I was so young, but I think that upbringing and having done the project taught me what the second element was kindness, right?
Hmm.
And I did not grow up with kindness. It was not something that was revered in the Middle East. It was viewed as
Mm,
weakness. And as you know, now when I look back, I'm like, these people are so kind. And yet it's something that was surprising because it's not something that was ever on my radar.
wow, that's amazing. So those types of what do I call them? I don't want to use the word elements, but for the sake of using it, all of these things that you share, many people may take for granted.
And I mean, I did. I took
Mhm.
my health for granted. I
Mm,
assumed you can go walk a dog and you can go for a walk. It's something,
mhm,
and now I can't do that.
mhm,
So yeah, I think a lot of people will take it for granted. But I like, for example, the last two elements, creativity and curiosity.
mhm.
I I remind people, I'm like, oh, you have people who focus on creativity. I don't have it in you. I'm like, no. We all were creative and curious at a point. I think about when you were a kid, right? You can take the most random bed sheet
Yeah.
on something, turn into a fort. So you have it in you. It's a matter of how much of it is important to you and how much of it you bring out. But
Mhm,
yes, you are a creative person. So
mhm.
so when people think I don't have it, it's a way of taking it for granted. I agree.
Right, exactly. Now, did you ever, now, you came here, US, when you were 6 years old. I don't know when you indicate your body started falling apart. I don't know at what age that was. Um, did you ever find out during this project what was going on with your body?
So I went through a few misdiagnoses, but yes, I think I've gotten rid of the chronic Lyme disease. And but again, same thing. People did not assume it because I'm on the west coast of the states, and they're like, well, we don't have Lyme disease there. Anyway, so and Lyme does affect the joints and the brain. So it affected my joints and my brain. So, anyways, um, so I'm in the process of working on that.
Okay.
Yes, I
Okay.
did find out it was that.
Okay. Okay. Do you think, well, this is probably a mute question, but I'm like, if it were not for that, as you mentioned earlier, this project would not have taken place.
I thought about this over, and this is why I believe things happen for you and not to you.
Mhm.
And it's a really weird way to think about whatever's happening is happening there for your greater good. And I would not have. I would have if my body was the same.
Yeah.
I would have continued to be in your dog, working. It's similar. I was just done the same thing.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, and there's no way I would have pursued this.
Right. Okay. Wow. And that's a different way and a very creative way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's been a gift.
See, that's
I
great.
don't feel it like I am suffering, but I definitely know deep down, of course, it's a gift.
Right. Okay. And that takes me back to the title, The Secrets. You called it the secret sauce of
Yeah, it
happiness,
is.
peace, and success. And it's all about your perspective and how you see things and those elements that you mentioned. Now, I saw you on television, and I know your book is a number one best-selling book. And where has do, doing this, because I believe also that you at this time are living your best life on your terms. And I say that because you are at peace. Yeah, there are problems. We all have problems. We all going to have problems. But you may even define where you are today as being successful. It's success for others that kind of get a deeper, meaningful understanding of the things that you have accomplished. Now, based after the fact, the book is done. You've been on television. People are talking about it. What do you think is next for you?
I don't know. I do know my focus right now is my health.
Okay.
And it's funny because someone had copied or done the exercises for my book, and my marketer was like, "We need to come up with a new version, so not to confuse the buyer why they copied this." And I'm like, honestly, I don't care. Right now, my focus is my health. And so I
Okay.
don't have it in me to worry about anything else. So
Okay.
once my health is improved and I can walk around, I can speak normally, I don't know the future. Do I enjoy speaking? Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
So that's
Um,
what I hope is the
right.
future.
Okay. Okay. Um, I was reading a few of your reviews, after people read the book, and it said they indicated that they were reminded by your book why life is beautiful and curiosity is worthwhile.
Interesting. I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought, it's funny uh when you hear things like that, it's kind of like, as you know, your work's not done in vain. However, but if you could change the trajectory of an individual's life that said, I'm reminded why life is so beautiful and curiosity is worthwhile. That says a lot for,
You
for,
did.
for what you've done. I thought that was amazing. And also, and the common wisdom is changing the way people live. Someone said that as well. And I thought that was beautiful.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
it's funny. I had written so many manuscripts published in academic journals that were so boring and so dense. And I want to make this not that. And I'm also an immigrant, so I didn't want having a mastery of the English to be a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to be simple but powerful. And that's what I did. That's what I told my editor. And that's what we focused on.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's
And that's
great.
why the book is not that long and it's easy to read. And it's really an easy kind of uplifting. It's not just a self-help book. And I'm sure you saw that. It's more than that.
Yeah, I did. I did. And I'm actually going to get your book. Is it on Audible?
It is. It's on
Mhm.
everything. And if
Okay.
someone is interested in buying it, The Common Wisdom is the name of the book, and it's on Amazon.
Okay.
But yes, it's on Audible. It's on ebook. It has all the versions.
Okay. Now that your project is over, and I'm going to ask you another question. I asked you in the beginning, before the project, how did you define wisdom? And you weren't quite sure.
No,
So,
I didn't know. I had no idea. I remember wondering, like, who are these people? Like, what is this?
right, exactly. Exactly. So now that you've done this project, how do you define wisdom?
Oh, I definitely feel like it's those eight.
Is-
Because everyone, like, for example, I quoted Albert Einstein a lot, I
Mhm.
think, or a few times. But he's like, and he was so humble. He's like, there's nothing different between me and someone who's just overly curious. I'm
Mhm.
just overly curious. I don't know, there's a difference. But he was very humble
Yeah,
and curious, of course, but he was very humble.
right,
So
exactly.
I would definitely define it as those eight.
Okay, great. Well, Dr. G, this conversation has been wonderful. I encourage my listeners to purchase your book. When you look at the reviews, you were like, wow, I can't wait to read this so I can be curious and see life as being beautiful and change my perspective about things that happens to me in my life. That is priceless. Just like wisdom, it's just priceless. And it's interesting, even in the book of Proverbs, when they talk about wisdom, I don't know the answer, but they always define it as she.
Sheep.
She, SHE. When they define wisdom, they say she did this, she did not. I found that fascinating. I'm not
Well,
sure.
similar to Mother Earth, right? The Earth we call as a female as well. So
Okay.
I think the idea, yeah, I think it has that sense of taking care of you,
Mm-hmm.
and the Earth does. So I'm sure having embracing that does as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I like that. The nurturing type. I
Right.
like that. That's my answer for now. I love that. So as we wrap up this podcast, uncovering the secrets of happiness, peace, and success, which is resilience, kindness, positivity, humility, creativity, spirituality, curiosity. Did I miss one?
No,
One,
I
two,
think
three, four, five, six, seven. I think I got them all.
you got no tolerance.
Tolerance. Oh, that's a good one. Tolerance. And boy, do we need that. So, so listeners, for those of you who are stuck, you know in your heart of hearts you want to do something, but you just can't do it because of those roadblocks. I encourage you to get Common Wisdom, to get Dr. G's book. And I have a feeling that that's going to change some things in your life. And Dr. G, thank you so much for your wisdom, your contribution to the world, for those who want to receive it. Like everybody won't read it, but the right person will read your book, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, for my listeners, if you believe that this podcast was just right on time, I ask that you share it. You replay it over and over and over. And again, I thank you. Bye for now, all my listeners. God bless you, and I love you. And thank you again, Dr. G.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yes.